deep dive into Active Inspire, which is our desktop-based software that requires you to connect to the panel. I will tell you from experience, last Friday alone, I just did a whole day, a whole 6-hour training on the activities player with Active Inspire, and I ran out of time. So there's a lot to go in there. However, I'm going to let you all know that there are some things that you can do if you want to dabble in it and you want to try building some activities. I will direct you to Learn Prometheus, and you can watch some videos maybe to get you started. And then we can have a separate conversation later on if we want to do a little deeper dive. But with that said, we'll just kind of dive into the whiteboard screen capture, annotate, screen share, spinner, and timer today. And what I love about these is that they are ready to go. The second you plug this panel in for the very first time, and the fact that they are created for teachers, by teachers, just sprinkled with a little Promethean tech support knowledge in there, it really makes it feel like you can take ownership of these, and that, again, it's extremely easy to use, creates those opportunities for increased engagement, and it maximizes your instruction in a fun way. Because I know when I taught, I had one of these fancy panels in the last 6 months before I, moved on and joined the world of Promethean. But we know that, these probably take up some major real estate in your classrooms. And in fact, in some classrooms, they probably go over top of a whiteboard. So we wanted to give you a whiteboard back, but also kind of make it a little bit more robust. So for those of you who had an opportunity to explore your whiteboard, you probably noticed a few things, but there are some hidden gems in here that I always like to go over. First part is the fact that it's an infinite canvas. It goes on and on and on. You don't have to erase if you don't want to. If you just simply take your fingers and you slide up, you have a full open brand new screen ready for you to go. All right. You also can pull in pre-installed backgrounds. We have pre-installed charts and templates like T-charts and Venn diagrams that you can just plop into the panel all at once. I know that was helpful for me because I used to get really irritated when I couldn't draw a perfect set of circles for a Venn diagram. I love that they give you a Venn diagram and it's perfectly symmetrical. I love the fact that there's also math tools embedded in the panel, and you can do some fun things with those, so I'll highlight those in a second. And multi-user mode creates an opportunity for 2 students to come up to the panel at once. While there are 20 simultaneous points of touch in the panel, they all would be recognized as the same point of touch in the same color and the same thickness. So if you wanted students to come up to the panel and have their own workspaces, you can create 2 workspaces, and I'll show you how to do that. The great part about that is it also drops the toolbar nice and low for the little guys, for those who teach elementary school. But I think the piece de resistance is the fact that unlike a traditional whiteboard where at the end of the day when you erase all of your notes, everything's gone, right, forever. You now have the opportunity to memorialize everything you've done with your students on the fly and save it to a flash drive or your cloud storage and either come back to it the next day or share it out with them. So that's great for those students who have IEPs and 504s that require them to have their notes shared with them, or just great for study guides and things like that. So we'll take a little dive into the whiteboard here. I hope I'm not messing up. Okay, great. Blank space. I didn't want to interrupt anyone's little artwork if they had something going here. So I always like to start from the top and work my way down. The top is going to be your skinny snowman, also known as your file button, right? Just like a file button in Microsoft Word, Excel, things like that. It gives you choices like starting a new whiteboard file, opening an existing whiteboard file, or saving them, right? You also have the exporting pieces there where you can export an entire screenshot of the panel that you see, like that visible screen, as well as exporting a PDF of the entire canvas, because I mentioned that this is an infinite canvas. It goes on and on forever, and you can just continue to scroll, and it's great. It will shrink it all down to an 8.5 by 11 if you needed to. I also loved the fact that I could switch the toolbar position from left and right. When I taught in a basic skill setting where I had multiple co-teachers coming in and out of my classroom, and so the joke would always be like, send the toolbar back to me, like I'm standing on this side. So we would just be able to send the toolbar back and forth to each other. Lefty, righty, those types of things too. It's always nice to have the option of finding where your toolbar works best. Okay. Then I'm going to skip the two little people for a second. I'm going to come back to them, but I'm going to talk about the hashtag or the pound sign for those of you depending on, you know, which gen we're working with here, right? I actually had somebody ask me what a pound sign is when I first started saying that. It's the pound sign with like the foursquare around it. And somebody was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh my, I have to adjust my my teachings here. It's a hashtag. But this is your background space, right? So you have all of your backgrounds as well as your foregrounds at the top. Your backgrounds can be changed with any of those 16 colors in the circles down below. So if you want to get funky and have a hot pink background, go for it, right? But I also love that I can add some lines over top, and that's one of your foregrounds. And for my teachers who teach handwriting, right, I know, well, if you're using foundations, you're probably using skyline, plain line, grass line, those types of things, and I can show you how to get that specifically into your panel. But you can add those foreground lines in there. You can change those foreground lines and those colors with the 4 rectangles that are shown there. So this is helpful for, again, anytime where you need to write. I don't know if anyone was like me. Every time I'd write on the board without a line, it just would kind of trail off. So this gives you a nice little structure here, but with a little pinch and a little zoom, you can stretch them out as far as you need to. This works with the graph paper that's installed here. It works with the music staff paper that's installed here. So a little pinch and zoom will make those accommodations for those students in the back who go, Miss Gregory, I can't read what you wrote. Yes, you can, because I made it nice and big. So I'm going to just go back to a blank screen here really quickly, and then jump down into the images, which is the little mountains. The mountains are going to take you to a space where you can find pre-installed charts and templates, so those Venn diagrams that I was mentioning, T-charts, mind maps, clock faces, timelines, you name it. It's probably here. But we also recognize that there's things that are specific to your curriculums that you're going to want to curate in your own personal library. For example, I just keep redirecting that, foundations. For anyone who's ever taught with foundations, you will know it is extremely specific. You cannot even take one little step out of the lane. It is very, very topic specific with very specific keywords and content. So in that case, when I taught with my panel, I needed to curate a gallery. In this gallery, it's blank right now because this is the guest profile, and it's not wanting to overtake anything in this space. But when you are on your owner profile, especially if you have a USB plugged in, it will recognize any JPEG or PNG file. So what I mean by that is any image file that you save. Not a PDF, not a Word document, an image file, and it will be able to be found here. I can pull in any image that I've saved to my flash drive here. I can also go to the web and bring in some additional pieces, and I can show you how to do that in 2 ways. You can download images from a web page. You can also screen capture from a web page. And I'll show you how to do that in a second again, and that will come back in the next portion of our lesson. So again, I'll just keep scrolling down the toolbar. You have your pen and your highlighter tools. I always like to talk about that pen and that highlighter because not many people know if they press and hold, you have some options on thicknesses. You have a pencil thickness, a pen thickness, and 2 marker thicknesses. And then the highlighter down below, same thing, press and hold, and it will populate for you. The pen is defaulted on the smallest side, and then the highlighter is defaulted on the thicker side. Obviously, a pen is going to be a little more opaque than a highlighter. Tries to give that real feel there. And I also always like to say, we know that those 5 colors can be a little boring, right? Blue, green, red, black, yellow. Not everyone wants to use those. So with a simple tap of this color palette that's here, I can now change the 5th color and the 5th color only. So those first 4 will always stay, but I can now change that yellow to hot pink, and it will stay hot pink until I change it. I personally leave mine on hot pink because it's my favorite, but it's entirely up to you. That works for the highlighter as well. So if you tap all the way down, that orange one could be changed with a simple tap of your color palette. Now I want to show you probably my favorite part that often goes unnoticed with the pen tool. So the pen tool can work when you are selecting that pen tool, and you can right, with those 20 simultaneous points of touch. When I'm on the selector tool, I can't write with the pen because it's selecting it, and now you see that I'm scrolling up. But now I can. Right? Very sloppy, but you get the gist. I'm on the selector tool, and I still wrote because it recognized this as a stylus. So that's a great thing for those teachers who like to work and just constantly be able to write and scroll at the same time. So this is nice now. Now I can write my last name, right, and scroll. So using the pen has its advantages when you want to just be on that selector tool. So just a little tidbit there. Yes?
What do you mean by selector?
So see, it's on the mouse tool, on the little on the little cursor tool. If I go to now with my fingers, right with it, it's going to just scroll for me. But it's recognizing my pen. It's recognizing the pen in that instance. I didn't have to select the pen tool. If I wanted to use my fingers to write, I would have to be on the pen tool.
The reason I'm asking, we get pulled into some different classrooms, and in some classrooms I can write and some I can't. So I'm thinking maybe this is why.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah.
Right?
So when you're on this cursor tool, on that little what looks like your mouse cursor, right? You can now scroll and scroll and scroll. Right? I can pick this up. I can pinch and zoom my annotations as well. Fun little thing there, right? All of those can now be picked up, moved, shrunk, things like that. But I don't have to now walk to that side, to that toolbar, to start writing again because I'm using the pen. So now, again, I can sit here and just write, hello, good morning, because it's recognizing this pen right now. I didn't have to tap this button to start writing. If I wanted to tap this button, now any point of touch will come through as a pen. So now I can pick up my fingers and write. Because I'm on the pen. Does that help differentiate that for you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay, you're welcome. Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's like you have to see it and you have to walk through it and things like that. So that's just one thing I wanted to show you, but I also love, there is something embedded here called the 3-second rule. And yes? Yes, I'll show you multi-user mode in a second. Yeah, skip that part because I do an activity with it and I model it in real life, in real time. We have something called the 3-second rule embedded in the whiteboard. So what I mean by that is, say I write the word cat on the board, and this can be done with anything. I've seen this done even with older students. And I put 3 seconds between each annotation. This is now not a single word. It looks like a single word here, but now I can pick this up, and now I can build words this way. Okay, I can now shift all of these, and it becomes a game. I've seen it done with math teachers in middle school where they've put different pieces of an equation all over the panel and said, figure it out, put it back together, make sense, make it true. I've seen it done with parts of a sentence. Scrambled all over the panel, put the sentence back together. And then you can even make it harder as the year goes on, right? Talking about how more complex sentences can make sense in multiple ways, right? I've seen it done where just for Friday game day, putting a whole bunch of letters across the panel, and how many words can you make? Things like that. So fun little thing to note there. Coming down here, you have your eraser tools. You have the Find Eraser as well as the Erase All eraser tool, just like the pen and highlighter tools, give you options for thickness. I feel bad, like my back has to go too because this table's in the way. And then you have your Erase All tool just below. The Erase All tool, I caution teachers every single time because if I go to erase that, I have now erased everything on my infinite canvas. It's gone. Yeah, so it's not just the viewable screen. So now if I were to go up here and pinch and zoom, you will notice that all of those annotations that I had floating on my panel, they're gone, okay? In those instances when that happens, you have the undo and redo buttons at the bottom, and, whoops, I hit it twice. And there they are, right? All of those annotations are there. So it's just that Erase All tool, be cautious of using that, right? Because it will erase everything. Coming down here, I now have my math tools. You have a ruler, a set square, a protractor, and a full protractor. I'm sorry, this table's like in my way, and I'm trying my best not to put my back to anyone. But I'm gonna bring in the the ruler and the 180-degree protractor to model some things for you right now. The ruler. I love the ruler because even though it's defaulted to the centimeter side, I can give it a spin and now I can measure in inches. Again, not to scale, things like that. But you'll also notice that you have those degree markers on there, which is helpful for any math teacher who wants to create a set of parallel lines or perpendicular lines for measurement. And with a simple tap on the 0, I now can create sets of lines, and now I have a math lesson on the fly. I now can bring over my protractor, tap it right on top, and I can do a few things with this. It is on a red dot in the center right now. It's maybe hard to see for those of you who are in the back, but that center dot is red right now. That will now allow me to press and hold, and I can now shade in this angle for students who might need that visual reminder. Okay, just to be like, oh, is it obtuse or is it acute? Let's talk about it, right? If I give it a little tap, it'll turn blue, and now I can add line sectors inside of my angles, and I always like to show this color-coded this way. So now I have some line sectors that are being added inside my obtuse angle, or I can even add them beyond that. And then with one more tap, I can turn it green, and we can now get to that circumference. I'll move them apart because they're all separate entities. You can all see how I did 3 different things with all of those tools just by giving it a little tap. Again, this is a fun little hack for creating shapes in the whiteboard because there's no little shape populator in our whiteboard. All right, and as promised, gonna come back to that multi-user mode. So say I wanted to teach a little lesson on, I don't know, winter versus summer. I don't know, just popped into my head. Bringing in a nice little Venn diagram here, and we're gonna have a conversation with my students, and I can talk with them about all the things that make winter and summer different, right? So I can start off by coming here, I'm gonna change some colors. So we're gonna talk about winter. To move this for the next group because it's in my way. And now I can continue this conversation with my students. We can just brainstorm some ideas like, okay, winter and summer, they both happen one time per year, and they're both seasons, right? Winter is cold, summer is hot, and things like that. Okay, now let's talk more. What else can we add to this? Oh, maybe we can add some visuals for some of those students who need to build some schema. So now I'm going to show you how you can populate images in your gallery in one of 2 ways. The first way is taking a screen capture of it, a screenshot of an image, and the second way is downloading an image and saving it to your gallery. So the first one, we'll start with going to my locker and Chromium. So I'm in the web browser, and now I'm going to show you some fun things here. I'm going to dock my web browser to the right with a little tap of my multi-windowing toolbar down below here. I'm going to come into my whiteboard and I'm going to dock this side to the left. And now I have both images for me to work with. I now can go here and I can Google winter scenes. No internet. Oh, darn. Let's try again. If not, I'm going to need you to really use your imaginations. Pretend this is a beautiful winter scene. Okay, great, awesome. So now I'm going to go into screen capture. And I'm going to take a picture of this big, beautiful winter screen, or winter scene, and click done. And say, wait a minute, I can open this in the whiteboard right now, but I want to add more information with this because my students are sharing some great stuff with me. So I'm going to hit close for a second. I'm going to now annotate over top of this first. And I'm going to say, oh my gosh, look at all of this beautiful snow, right? Labeling it for those students who need that additional support. Now I can come into screen capture, and I have now modified an image now it's a big, beautiful winter snowy scene, right? And I can click open in my whiteboard. This is now my big, beautiful wintry scene. And now I can add it to my Venn diagram, okay? Now, we're gonna talk about a big, beautiful beach scene, right? Like, hopefully the internet is restored. Oh my, we're gonna have to talk to somebody about this. And now I wanna download this image, okay? And save this to my gallery to find it. Skinny Snowman's gonna be your best friend in the Chromium web browser. I can now find in my browser that I can click downloads, okay? Oh my goodness, because it doesn't have the internet. Ah! But I can download an image.
Do you want me to tell someone?
What was that?
Do you want me to find someone?
I'll get it for the next one. Thank you though. I can click downloads and it will download it and save it to my gallery. Okay, it will be creating an image gallery. So to find it then, I would go into my images and there in my gallery, there's that image I screen captured before, right? The one that I made you imagine it was a big, beautiful, snowy scene. It's there and it will stay there until I delete it. Same thing would happen if I pressed the skinny snowman and downloaded an image and saved it to my storage. And then I can just simply give it a tap and it will open right in the whiteboard. Yes?
Can you go over again how you
Yes.
got the screen split?
Sure. See this toolbar down here?
Yes.
That black toolbar, okay? You can dock things to the left and to the right, so the one image, the one rectangle is a little larger than the other, so it
Right.
directs you there. So when it's in full screen, so I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna make my whiteboard full screen again, okay? Across the bottom, I wanna send this to the left, I'm gonna just give that a tap, and it will just snap it to the left-hand side of the
Is that
panel.
bottom toolbar always there though? I feel like I don't always see that.
Okay, that toolbar is always there, and sometimes it's not recognizable because
Right.
we don't know what it is.
Right.
For the most part, in looking at your inventory, I knew that for the most part, you all have these panels, with the exception of that one. See, you wouldn't even do this, sorry. But no, for the most part, in looking at your inventory, everyone does have these panels, so you have that capability of multitasking. But a fun little hack with multi-windowing toolbar. If you press and hold and drag up, you now can create a floating window. You can shrink it even smaller. Because now you have a half-eaten waffle that I like to say, right? It's 8 dots, and I can drag and shrink it and put that up top, up here. I don't want it to be full screen again. I'll just leave it float there. Now here's my PDF that's underneath. I can now pull this up and shrink it, and I can slide this over here and still continue teaching without going into one app and then the next app and things like that. So I can have a web browser open, a whiteboard to catch all of my notes, and then I can have a PDF of maybe the actual page that my students are catching notes on too while they're working. So it's a fun little way to just maximize your instruction because you're multitasking all at the same time. So that was the whiteboard in a nutshell. However, I saved the best part for last. So if I come over here, I now can split my screen in two. The people with the dotted line down the middle creates that multi-user mode. I now have 2 separate toolbars down below, nice and low for my little guys, and they can each choose red or green or red, whatever, blue, whatever color they want. And Johnny and Allie do not need to fight over both being on the blue marker, right? And things like that. They also have their own set of math tools and things like that. So everything that you saw on that toolbar on that side is now given to them down below, for the exception of accessing the gallery images. Okay, so all the images that you can populate and bring into the whiteboard. To simply exit that, you give it a tap. Okay? So that was a very fast walkthrough of the whiteboard, but I also covered a quick few things as you noticed in there, so I'm going to recap. I went through all of the tools in the whiteboard, and when I got to talking about all of the images you can find in the gallery as well as your charts and templates, I talked about how you could screen capture images, right? Take a screenshot of them, but annotating over top of those web pages first to label it and memorializing those annotations by capturing that image and now saving it to my gallery to use again and again and again to bring into the whiteboard. So that actually, because I've done this so many times, has brought us to this point. So I've done all of these tools all within our whiteboard lesson here. So Just some things I want to kind of point out to you. In your annotate tool, when you do use that annotate tool, which is one of those apps down below, you do have the ability to tap the screen capture button right in the toolbar, so you don't have to go back into your locker to capture that image, to screenshot that image. And if you're all thinking, Lauren, you're talking so quickly, you're moving so fast, there's so much information here. Again, on these task cards that I'm giving you, I walk you through some of these activities on those task cards so you can try them on your own when you have some time to just play. Which I also know is sometimes hard to come by, but I highly encourage you to take maybe a few minutes every day and do a task card a day just to get you comfortable with following these pathways and doing them individually. You also watched me multi-window and share those images all at the same time by simply tapping some buttons across the bottom toolbar. So with that said, we'll just talk quickly about timer and spinner, and then I can show you screen share, and that will be the end of our presentation for today. So timers and spinners are built into your panel. They live in your locker, and I love that they just add a layer of gamification to your classrooms and just give you lots of options when it comes time to teaching, and I love that it also helped keep me on track too. So when I access my locker, which I'm going to go to the home screen first to give me a blank screen, I can find my spinner and timer usually on this first slide unless I've moved them. I will start with the timer here, and what I love about these is they float. They float over top of any source, meaning if you're on your Chromebox side and you've given it a tap and you've switched sources and gone over there, you can pull up a timer on your Chromebox side. With this, I now have the ability to make them larger if I need to by pressing that magnifying glass, so I can make them as big as I want, meaning as large as the full screen. Or I can simply minimize it if I want it to still be ticking away, but also be shrunk down into that top corner. To unveil it again, just press the eyeball, and there it will be. I love though that even though it's called a timer, it has a clock and a stopwatch embedded in it as well. So when you press that little gear button, it will open up all of your settings, and you'll find that you'll have the timer across the top. Let's see if I can reach it. The stopwatch in the center, and then the clock over here, okay? So I'm gonna show you 3 examples. I'm gonna add 3 on my screen because I can have up to 8 happening on my panel at once. So if I go into my settings and I work with the timer here, some things I can do are change it by turning that analog on and off. I can add some celebration so that when the timer goes off, you can have confetti or fireworks exploding all over your screen. It's kind of fun. You can change the sound. It can be as harsh as an alarm clock in the morning or as pretty and nice as the harp or the music box that you have down below. And then you can turn on an end phrase. Congratulations, pencils down, time's up, things like that. And then the best part is those editing of the presets. I always, for some reason, needed a 2-minute timer and a 20-minute timer in my classroom. So one of these 4 presets I could press and hold. Press and hold. Come on. There we go. And I can adjust that preset, and I can add a 20-minute timer to my presets, and then I can access those by tapping that button there. Okay? Some fun things that you can do with the timer. Coming over here, if I want to change this over to a stopwatch, you can add the centiseconds or turn them off. You can also turn that tick on and off. I personally leave the tick off because it's quite obnoxious, but that's entirely up to you, right? So that's what the stopwatch looks like. Coming over to the last one, I can switch this now over to a clock. And come on. In the clock, I can make it digital or analog, entirely up to you. When it's in analog mode, I can add that second hand, right? Add that second hand. And I can add the 24 hours if I wanted to. I personally don't like to do any extra math. That's not required of me. So when it's 1 p.m. and forward, I just like to know it's 1 p.m. and forward, not 1300. That's just my personal preference. Because I can have multiple clocks, timers, and spinner timers and stopwatches floating on my panel at once, I can also have a couple options floating at the same time. I can have a digital clock and an analog clock on the panel at once. This was great when I taught second grade. They were learning how to tell time. They can make that connection between the digital time and the analog time. I also had pen pals in other parts of the world. We wrote to students who were learning how to speak English in Madrid, in parts of the UK, in India, and they wanted to know what time it was, where their friends were, you know, and they would get a kick out of the fact that the students in India were probably sleeping towards the end of our school day. They'd be like, oh my gosh, they already had dinner, they're going to bed, and so it was just a fun little way to bring in some cultural pieces as well. So that is the timer in a nutshell. When I get into the spinner, which is also located in my locker, I can have 4 spinners floating on my screen at once. There are some defaults in here, continents, shapes, numbers, things like that, but I can create my own spinners. This is great for creating class rostered spinners. So gone are the days of popsicle sticks and choosing students' names from there. I used to have a spinner for character, setting, and plot, so that when my students were stuck on generating ideas for writing a story, I'd have all 3 spinners on the panel at once, and here, hopefully that gave you some inspiration. Find out who your characters are, what your setting is, and you know what's going to go wrong in your story and things like that. I've seen it done with math teachers creating X and Y coordinate spinners and bringing that into the whiteboard and showing students how to plot those points. So there's so many things that you can do with a spinner and a timer. I give you lots of inspiration on the task cards for the spinner when I share those out with you after today. So that is the spinner in a nutshell, and as promised, I was going to get to screen share, which is my favorite part. So